Hi folks, I hope you're doing well. Blake here and I'm back with a new YouTube video, and this one is a vlog. And it's all about BBC introducing. So I'm really chuffed to say that a few weeks ago my song Amaybemind, and there's a lyric video for it in case you've not seen it, check it out here. But it was played on BBC Introducing at my local station, which for me is BBC Three Counties Radio. So I'm really glad this happened, and it represented a bit of a milestone in my music career because I've been trying to get music on the BBC for a good few years now. But I wanted to kind of reflect on what I've learned about submitting to BBC Introducing and some lessons I can pass across that might help you if you're trying to get your stuff out there as well. Maybe get noticed and played on your local BBC radio station. So the presenter for the Introducing show on my local station is Kerrie Cosh, and if you'd like to hear what she said about my new track, please do. I'll put the clip, it's a short, down below in the description. But without any further delay, here's everything I've learned about BBC Music Introducing, everything you need to know about the process of submitting your music, having it listened to, and then considered to be played as well, hopefully. And here are some hopefully useful tips I've picked up along the way to make your song stand out to the radio presenters. So first of all, you might be saying, what is BBC Introducing? So the programme was really established back in 2007 and it's been going for almost a couple of decades now. And BBC Introducing has led to many different famous artists being kind of discovered and going on to achieve sort of widespread fame and national tours and all that sort of stuff. Many of the people you'll know, so I won't go into them, but do feel free to look into it. So because it is a BBC based project, and obviously the BBC is funded by taxpayer money, it's only available if you live in the UK and you put in your sort of closest regional kind of station determined by your postcode. I'll come back to that in a moment to talk through it. So sadly you can't apply for this if you are outside the UK, and if you are under the age of 16 you need someone else to submit the music on your behalf, so a parent or guardian of some sort. So some other things to consider: you can only submit original music. If you put forward a cover, it won't be accepted, and obviously that's to do with sort of licensing and who owns the song and, you know, kind of payments and all that kind of thing, so it has to be your own music. And on top of that, they accept a range of different file types, but it's got to be smaller than 100 megabytes. Your original song must also be obviously radio friendly, and the answer to loads of other FAQs can be found on their website, and I'll put a link to that down below in case you've got any further questions I've not answered in this brief kind of video right now. And finally, because of the sheer sort of quantity of songs they receive, BBC Introducing stress you can only upload 2 original songs per 30 days. So if you've got a massive back catalogue of songs you want to release, then consider prioritising them in terms of which ones you want to submit first. So the first thing you need to do is make a profile on the BBC Introducing uploader, and you'll see there are 2 tabs to this. The first one is a profile overview that goes over who you are as an artist, what kind of inspirations you have, and your link to the kind of community whose radio station you're sending your music to. And then the other one is track uploads, where you can track what you've submitted previously, where it got to, was it listened to, was it played, and how many remaining songs you've got to submit each month. So here we are on the uploader, and this is my profile overview. So you can see that I've got an ID, I've got an email linked where they'll send me all the updates for my songs that have been submitted and if they get listened to or played on the station. You can also see that I've chosen my local radio show, and for me it says BBC Introducing Northamptonshire and Three Counties. So a bit of a talking point about this, which was that a few years ago BBC actually cut a bit of the funding for BBC Introducing, and what that meant is they reduced the amount of stations that were doing BBC Introducing shows. So several of the stations were conglomerated, and it meant that there were fewer kind of stations to cover the whole coverage of the UK. And that's why Northamptonshire, for me, is included in this radio show, even though I don't live in Northamptonshire. I live in the Three Counties area, so that would be my local BBC radio show. Now at the time, the BBC claimed they were still very supportive of independent and unsigned musicians, and that's represented by the fact that they changed from doing 1 show a week to 2. What this means from the artist's perspective, I'm not entirely sure. You could argue that 2 shows a week means that you've got twice the opportunity for your song to be played. You could also argue that a much bigger area means that there's many more musicians submitting, which means you're one of many more submissions, so it's less likely you'll get played. I'm not really sure. From my perspective, 3 counties and Northamptonshire is a massive area with loads and loads of musicians. So you might want to think about where to choose in terms of the coverage of the stations, how many musicians are submitting to there, and your link to the local station as well. So the reason I mention this is that a few years ago at BBC Introducing Live, I spoke to one of these local music presenters. I won't mention his name, but he basically said to me, if you have a connection to different areas, so for instance one where family are from, one where you've worked for several years, one where you've lived for several years, then pick the one which would give you maybe the best chance of being played, so maybe the fewest submissions. It covers the smallest area. And if you are played, you still end up on the same BBC database as well. There is one caveat to this though, which is that BBC Introducing also host their own events and put on stages at big festivals and that sort of thing. So if you claim you are from a certain part of Scotland, let's say, and you actually live in London, and you get invited to play events that are in the north of Scotland, because that's where you said you're from, then you might come into a bit of hot water there. So do bear that in mind. Hopefully that means the area you pick will inform kind of what you write in your connection to it, and think about things that help out the local community or music community. So have you played a lot of venues there? Have you got played on local radio stations that aren't the BBC that are in that area? Have you hosted open mics? So those kind of things that make you stand out a little bit as a member of the local music community. So next up, you get asked for your artist picture. Put a good one here, because if you get played on the radio, this will be used for your promotional tools that they'll send you along. And they'll ask you whether you're a band or a solo artist as well, and how to pronounce your artist name or personal name if it's particularly, unfamiliar. You're then asked to pick your genre, and you can change this, so you can go back and edit your profile whenever you want to. The reason this is really important is the genres you pick will determine which radio stations they send your submissions to. So as well as sending it to the local radio station BBC Introducing team, they'll also send it to the national radio station, so BBC 1, 2, whatever. And if you pick, for instance, jazz, they'll send it to the jazz show. If you pick blues, they'll send it to the blues show, whatever. So bear that in mind and try and be as accurate as you can when you're picking your own genre for your music. Now, a lot of us are exploring our sound as musicians, so if you change genre with a new track, that's fine. Just be sure to change your genre in your profile before submitting, or it might go to the wrong person. The next part is a biography and some influences as well. And try and fill this in as accurately as you can, and with sort of exciting language about the music that you make. Try and explain it in a kind of exciting way, like you're trying to sell your songs, because this is what the DJs will read out on air, and if it's interesting, they're more likely to read it out. As a musician, I know it can be really hard to pick influencers that you feel really represent your music, and everyone wants to be sort of individual. So my advice is, each time you upload a new song, especially if there's a change in genre or anything like that, update the influencers, because then if it's like, this song sounds like this band, that will kind of come through in the music. Whereas if you keep them as, these are roughly the people that influence me, and then your new song moves massively away from that, again, that might put a DJ off sort of playing your music, because people won't be able to hear that influence in the song that you've submitted. And finally, social media accounts. Be sure to link these. I found this useful because when I promoted information about my song being played on the BBC Introducing kind of station and also the presenter did share kind of the things that I mentioned, so it gives you a little bit more exposure as well. It also means that that presenter might look out for you in their DMs, which I'll come on to talk about, if they've got your information already there and you've been played on the radio before. Finally, there's a section that asks if you want to get paid. If you are played on the radio, they will pay you. You own the rights to your song. You'll have to get it sorted out with PRS. I'm not going to go into that because that's an entire other video, but basically if you don't know how to sort out your music licensing, do go and look it up online. PRS for music in the UK are the people who will pay you whenever your music is played somewhere, aired online, played on radio, that sort of thing. Alright, so your profile is all set up. So now here is how you upload music. As I mentioned earlier, you can only upload 2 songs every 30 days. and actually the uploader has something built into it. So if you try and upload the same file, so let's say a WAV and then the same file again, but it's also a WAV, even if you've renamed it and it's the same track, it will recognize it as being previously submitted. So this is why it's important to choose your station carefully, choose your genre carefully and all that, because otherwise when you've submitted it the first time, if there's any mistakes, that's kind of it and you've kind of ruined your chances. So bear that in mind before submitting. So you can see that the upload a track widget is a kind of drag and drop scenario, and if you look underneath it gives you a lot of advice for the files you need. So they can be WAV or MP3, 100 megabytes maximum, which is pretty massive for a file, so it shouldn't be that big, and it tells you the kind of formatting you need your song in as well. And just to show you what it looks like, so here is my latest submission of amaybemind. So you put in the title, the composer, and then the tune code. I just mentioned PRS. This is the code that PRS will give you, and it means they can directly organise you getting paid for your song being played on the radio. If you don't have this when you submit, that's fine, you can fill it in afterwards and they can backdate it, but it's good to sort out when you're available to. So next up you have to put in your track notes. These are things you want the DJ to read when they're considering your music, and I have a few suggestions for you to hopefully help you out with this. So here's mine. You'll see I've said this is my latest track, amaybemind. I say it's radio ready at under 2 minutes 30 seconds, and the reason that's important is although songs are as long as they need to be, I recognise that as a musician, sadly a modern day audience don't want to listen to songs on the radio if they're super long. They'll get bored of them, and DJs really won't consider them if they're beyond maybe 3 minutes, maybe at a push 3.5 minutes. So if you can keep it under 3 minutes and you're happy with it, please do. And also it might depend on the kind of genre you're submitting to as to whether that's suitable. A jazz track, for instance, maybe a longer song is kind of fine because it's more experimental and there's more kind of ideas going on and it's a little bit more of an ambient sound, but that's really up to you as an artist. And then at this point you have to become your kind of inner salesperson and try and sell your song to the listener. This is essentially doing the DJ's job for them or helping them out so they appreciate it. They want to know what's your song about, who would like it, what exactly do you want to pick out in the track that people might enjoy. So I've said here, for instance, it's packed full of energy, it's a funk-infused indie banger, it's about OCD, anxiety and indecision, and it's got dynamic rhythms, infectious grooves and vibrant horn sections, and it gives a kind of energetic soundscape to thought-provoking lyrics. Write something like that that feels like that's exactly what the song's about, that's the message I want to convey, and you can make someone think that sounds an interesting idea. I then wrote a little story underneath. I was told recently by someone who is kind of working at one of these introducing stations that a good piece of advice is to put in a little bit of a story about the song. How did you think of the lyrics? Does it relate to your life? You don't have to be too in-depth, but a little tidbit that's quite interesting for radio discussion that isn't just here's the song. So for instance here I wrote something which is true, which is that unusually for me I heard the kind of chord progression for the song in a dream. I woke up, grabbed my guitar in the early hours, wrote the song, and kind of that's how it was born out of nothing, where it usually comes from, you know, weeks or whatever of practicing and writing. So if you've got any story like this about what the lyrics are about, where they came from, any kind of deeper discussion, that will usually resonate really well with the DJ and might increase your chances of being played as well. Finally, you can tag your song. This is for specific shows. Sometimes they will commission a certain angle and then they'll ask for music for that. So there was one a few months ago which was about kind of like chill nighttime kind of thing, all related to good habits with sleeping. So don't put anything in the tag unless specifically you want to be considered for that show, but there is a drop down for that distinction. So then you can put in information about things like your record label if you have one. If you don't, just leave it out completely, it's fine, you don't need it. And then same for your publisher as well. You put in the release date, and I try to release it just as the song's being released. So I usually sent it to a BBC introducing show like the week of release, because it'll usually take them maybe a week to listen to it. So by then the song will have come out and people can directly go from the radio to streaming. It's up to you, but obviously if you put a song out that's not available on streaming platforms and someone hears it on the radio and likes it, and then they've got to wait for 2 weeks, the chances they will have forgotten about it by the time that 2 weeks rolls around. So bear that in mind if you've got a song that's coming out soon and you want to submit it to BBC Introducing. And finally, after all that, you've submitted it, you'll get an email which I'll show you in a moment, but you'll be able to see on the uploader a tracker that tells you what's happened to your song. So you can see here, mine has been assigned to the appropriate kind of show that I've chosen in the last section. It's been uploaded by me at the time, at the start of April, and you can see that it was listened to and it shows you when it was broadcast. So if it does get played, you'll get an email saying it's been broadcast and on what day, and they actually clipped a little bit out for you so you can go back and listen to the show on BBC Sounds. But I wanted to first show you what happens when your song gets uploaded and then listened to and then hopefully broadcast. So you should get an automated email to the email that you put into your profile, and it'll tell you every time a song is listened to by someone on the team at the BBC, and it will also tell you as soon as it's been broadcast on the BBC as well. So I'm just going to show you the email for when it's been broadcast, and you'll see they say, we've played your track, here's when it was played, and here is the show, and you can listen to it again on BBC Sounds. It's available for 30 days after it's been played for the first time. A more recent thing is actually when it's been played on BBC Introducing, they'll then submit your song to what's called BBC Orbit. This is a dedicated kind of BBC website for discovery of new music, and everyone that's been played on Introducing gets their song that's been broadcast put on there, and it's in rotation with other kind of similar artists. I think it uses AI or something like that to recognise similarities between local artists, and it will make kind of playlists for listeners. So you can send people here and say, if you like, you know, this artist, you might like me, that sort of thing. It's a really good thing for building support in a kind of communal way for local musicians. That will be automatically done for you 14 days after it's been on the BBC, and on top of that they will provide you with a free bit of promotional material to talk about your song being put on Orbit, and the link as well that you can copy into that post. So that is the whole process of submitting to BBC Introducing, getting notified, and hopefully getting your track played. Now the next point is really key, and that is don't be a stranger. Try and interact with the person who is the presenter at the radio station for your kind of introducing show that you're applying to. Do so in a really nice and respectful way. Obviously everyone wants their music played and they are really busy and they're trying to kind of support local music as much as they can, and just kind of provide a bit of detail if you want to about what the song's about, that sort of thing. There's a thin line between letting them know and chatting to them and badgering them, so please don't over message. But bear in mind that if you've made some kind of contact, whether that's in person at one of your gigs for instance, or whether it's on Instagram or similar, that might go a long way to kind of making you show up at the front of their mind when they're listening to your music. And if you've established that relationship and you want to take it one step further as well, which could help you out, they are obviously fans of music. They're playing local music on a radio station, so you could reach out if you've got any big gigs coming up and say, I'd love you to come along to my show, I'll pay for your ticket, that kind of thing. That will give you some sort of representation, at least in the thoughts of local radio presenters, and you never know if they're available, they might come along as well. And the final suggestion I've got is one which BBC Introducing might iron out, and I'm hoping they don't do that. But if you really believe in a song and you've submitted it once and it's been listened to and not broadcast for whatever reason, and you would like it to be reconsidered, let's say to a different station for instance, so a different listener, then the way you do this is you change your radio station affiliation on your profile. However, when you submit that same file again to the track upload, it will be recognised that you've already submitted that before. So if you have the same track but in a different format, so not WAV but MP3 for instance, and you've done one submission as one and one as the other, then it will come up as a different track, which will in theory let you submit the same song twice. Obviously if someone at the station listens to it and looks at your profile and they see you've submitted it before under a different name or something, and it had been rejected before or not played before, that might come into their consideration for whether they play it and what they think about you as an artist. In theory, you could delete your previous submission and submit it again under this new file format. If you delete your previous one and submit it under the old file format, it will still be recognised as being, you know, listened to before. So that's a kind of little bit out of the box way to resubmit a song, but it's kind of still possible at the moment, but they might iron it out on the uploader eventually. So thank you for watching. That was my experience of using BBC Introducing and uploading lots of songs there over the last few years, and finally getting a song played on a local BBC radio station. If you liked the video, please let me know and like it below, and please also comment and let me know if you have any questions that I maybe can answer, and if not me, maybe someone else in the comments can answer your question for you. And if you enjoy music related content in general on YouTube, I do lots and lots of stuff, so not only vlogs like this where I talk about being a musician, things I've experienced and that sort of thing. I do guitar lessons, I do my own performances, I do my releases of original songs, I do loads and loads and loads of different stuff, and you can kind of hear about it first and follow along by clicking the subscribe and notification bell buttons. Then you'll be notified every time I do a new video. Not only that, but I'd love if you checked out my latest song, Amaybemind. That was played on the BBC. I'll put all the links you need for it down below, and one of the cards at the end will be the official lyric video for the song. Thanks very much, take care of yourself, and I'll catch you next time.